Hello and welcome to this edition of the Mormon Meat Locker. I am Cable the Party Jenkins here with my co-host Caroline Kingsley, and tonight we have our guest Challice Carsey with us.
Hi.
How you doing tonight, Challice?
I'm great.
Can you tell us
Wonderful.
a little bit about yourself, Challice?
Do you want me to tell you more about the film or just where I'm from
Why don't
originally?
you start with, yeah, just a little bit about you, and then we'll go into the film.
Well, I guess I consider Missouri more of my home, although I've lived a lot of different places. California, was born overseas and stuff like that. Um, and I come from a large family. I have a lot of eclectic nature to my family. I have my dad, I'm pretty open about it, is homosexual, and um, my mother and father are divorced. My father lives in Oregon with his partner Steve. We're really close, and I have from that and one other marriage. There's 7 brothers and sisters. Plus, I have six stepbrothers and sisters, and I live in Utah right now. So that's
Sure.
a little. I'm an occupational therapist by trade.
Sure. That's cool. It sounds like a really interesting past you come from. And so for our listeners and viewers, so Anna Challice, I should call you Challice, took a trip. You decided you were turning 30 years old, correct? And you decided
Mhm.
that you were going to take a trip across the United States and document what it's like to be single in the church at 30 years old. And you went around and interviewed other people. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, it sort of was more of a. It started out as it kind of vacillated between this personal and public experience, right? So all those years approaching 30 um, were so difficult for me. And then actually, when I turned 31, I had kind of a crazy, traumatizing experience. And then I was actually a little bit beyond that experience, and I felt prompted by the Lord to move to Alabama, and so I went there to go to graduate school. And while I was there, I was called as the stake single adult rep for the Bessemer stake, and because there really wasn't much for single adults over the age of 30, and so with the help of many of my friends, we really got a good program going there. Had one of the first, single adult conferences there, and gosh, I love those people. And but I guess the hard part was for me is I just had so much difficulty seeing what they were going through out there and knowing what people had been through where I was at and what I went through, that I decided to travel around and interview people because I was compelled by stories from other people. And I think at first I was disturbed by what was going on. I feel a little differently now though than what I did when I started. But yeah, I went all over the country.
Well,
Um,
so tell us a little bit about what was your self-discovery like as you toured the country and documented it on film.
well, to be honest with you, I think when I first started, I was sort of angry. I was sort of frustrated, and because when I would hear these phone calls late at night, and people would call me in tears, talking about how lonely they were, and I was pretty, I took my calling pretty seriously, and so even though our stake was huge, I would drive all over, and I think just, I started out in Alabama, and then I went into Georgia, and I think the thing that sort of impressed me a lot, the most, was I was feeling kind of negative, and then I would meet these people who were converts to the church, and remarkably converts to the church were way more positive, than I was, and they'd be they'd say these things they just kind of basically, you know, confront me about my own issues. We do live in a family focused faith, and that's the way it should be. You know, it should be focused on families because that's God's eternal plan for us. And to kind of be in doubt about that would be sort of silly if you're part of our faith. And slowly over time, I would just meet people like that, and then I would go into I remember I was in a very poor neighborhood in Tennessee, and met the most humble people who, like, you know, I was lucky, you know, that my car wasn't robbed, you know, out in some neighborhoods, and I meet these people online and stuff, and it just, I think by the time I reached California, and then also some comments made by my family to me, I just realized that my life isn't so unfair, and it's just not that bad, you know, and it was just a really, is really faith promoting experience for me, because I've seen the hard part of it, and I've seen now also the bright, beautiful people that like are you and Cable, where people that consider there are people that are striving to live the life that, you know, we were intended to live. We weren't intended to live a life where we give up. So I really, really respect what you're doing here and what Cable's doing.
Thank you. Well, and I've probably said it here before that I feel that I think it's hard not to see this point in our lives when when we're single and we're in a church that's so focused on family that we're very focused on finding that eternal companion, and then it makes this time of our life seem like a segue. And I think that this time is so much more beautiful and in depth than a segue. I don't think we give it as much credibility as we should, that we can form these really rich relationships with people. And it's not just a matter of, you know, if they're not going to be my eternal companion, then they're not worth getting to know. I really feel I've just met the most amazing people and gotten to know some really great people, and as well as had really rich experiences that I frankly wouldn't have had if I was married right now. Not to say that I would, you know, want to stay in this period forever and not get married, but while I'm here, I'm going to really appreciate it for, you know, every ounce that I can, because I know that one day when I am married, I'm going to look back at this time and really cherish the memories that I have and the friendships that I built.
Yeah, I completely agree. You know, I think, like, there were just, I mean, not to give too much away about the film, but, you know, I think one experience I could probably share was one thing that sort of, I think, kind of encapsulates how I feel about the single members of the church. There was a friend of mine that, and I don't even think I mentioned this in the film, that we met online, and then we met up in a different state, right? And I was kind of excited to meet him and stuff, and then we got together and we had, like, the most horrible date. It was absolutely awful.
Oh no.
Like I mean, like, by the end of the date, I think I even lectured him on how to properly treat a girl, and he was, like, kind of going off on me, and it was, like, almost like, I mean, like, bad, you know.
Right. That does sound
And I don't usually do that, but so anyway, and then what happened was, as I was doing this documentary, as I finished it and I returned to Utah, he actually moved back to Utah at the same time into the same ward. And also, when I was in California, I saw him at a singles conference, right? And when I saw him, I was like, thinking to myself, I could be really rude and snooty and, you know, whatever. But I just thought, you know, that's not God's way. I should forgive, and we're all on our own personal journeys, and he's in the right place where he should be. And so we were both chose to be friendly with each other. And then when we ended up in the same ward, we each made that choice again to be friendly with each other. And actually, there's an event that we passed through that I mentioned in the film that was extremely poignant to me, and we shared that very it was I'll tell a little bit, but it was there was a certain person that passed away that we were both friends with, and it was during that period of time, and he had made a shift in his life spiritually, that we became really close friends. And I have the deepest respect for this person now. And to think about that transformation, right, from the horrible date to, like, one of the most poignant spiritual experiences of my life, and to think that that wouldn't have happened had we not both been willing to forgive and move on, I think is amazing. And it also says so much about what we're supposed to be for each other, right? We're not just dates. We're not just, like, some guy or some girl. But it's really like so critical. These people in our wards, not just our wards and not in our lives for so many years for no reason at all. They're there because we are supposed to influence each other, supposed to strengthen each other, reach out to each other, and to be there for each other. And we're also going to hurt each other. We're going to hurt each other violently. And I think it would be absolutely pretentious if we weren't hurting each other at the same time we were helping each other. Like, it would be so unreal. I mean, don't we want to have real relationships where I get hurt, you get hurt, you forgive, I forgive? I mean, that's what it's all about for me. Sorry, I went off a little bit there.
No. I love that, and I've never heard it put that way. And there's a lot of truth to that, and I think that it's so important to be real. And it reminded me of there was a girl, gosh, it was probably about a year ago, that she and I liked the same guy. I mean, it sounds so cheesy, but we did. Like, she was kind of just before me, and dating him, kind of overlapping and stuff. And I think we would kind of look each other out of the corner of our eyes. And we both kind of made a decision that we were just going to be friends anyway. And she's gorgeous, and it would be easy just to, like, be super jealous and, like, oh, I hope that, she's not around him. Or, but we became good friends, and then by and by, it didn't work out for either of us and this guy, and we both kind of moved on, and we're like, it wouldn't have been a good relationship for either of us, and now we're both friends, and I'm still friends with the guy and stuff. And it really taught me that you can't make any snap judgments or feel off about someone because you don't know that they could be a good friend to you, and you could really be missing out on a good friendship and blowing it over for something that could just be really temporary.
I agree. Do you guys include Cable in this discussion, or is he just listening? I don't know, because I'm curious what he thinks.
People come into the end with the most profound comments.
It reminds me of the joke my dad always tells about this guy who didn't talk to his wife for 6 months. They weren't fighting or anything. He just wasn't quick enough to interrupt. No. I think you've made some good points, and one thing I was going to say is, as we're all going through this single life, I think we get down in ourselves and we get into this woe is me attitude, and that happens when we become selfish and all we're thinking about is ourselves and how we're going through such a hard time. If we think outside of ourselves, kind of like what President Hinckley said, the advice his father gave him when he said, forget yourself and go to work. If we forget about the hard times we're going through and we try to focus on others and see how we can help other people, then we can see a lot of, we'll see, like you pointed out, Challice, we can see all these people out there that are fantastic people that we can create great relationships with when we're not so focused on ourselves. If all we're doing is focus on ourselves, we're going to miss out on some of these things, and we're going to miss out on some of these wonderful people that are out there. And if we can just put ourselves out there, not worry so much about ourselves, but just see, how can you help others? What can you do to make the single life a better one? And there's a lot out there.
I love that. I think it's good to make an effort to reach out to different people, just to even just say, hey, because how nice is it just to get a message? We all love it when our text, our phone brightens up with a text from someone we haven't heard from in a while, or someone saying, hey, I know that you were kind of having a hard time, or you were sick, or how's it going with this, and following up, and that strengthens a relationship. And it really does. Every cliche that you hear is true, that when you focus on serving others, you really forget yourself and you become happier, more optimistic in the meantime. And I remember one day sort of having this inspired epiphany that our lives are so much more simple, and the way and the gospel is just so much more simple than we think. And I think we just tend to fear so much and feel like our lives have to be this kind of direction, and if this doesn't happen, then I'm not going to be happy. And if we just kind of let things be, and we just kind of ease into things and stop worrying so much and stop getting stressed out, what if I end up alone, what if I and I feel stupid because all my friends are married, and what's wrong with me, and I'm a failure. If we just kind of let go and be more accepting of our lives, then we'll probably be a lot happier.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, I mean, this this is where I'm going to be like sort of real, right? Like, there's a part of me that feels this sort of like hope and stuff like that, and that's the most real part of me, right? Because I can't ever let that die, or else everything about me would die, right? But there's also this part of me, like, I have to say, I think there are things that we could do better, like not just us personally, but I think like there's things that could be better, just around the country and how singles programs are run and stuff like that. And I guess you can't really, I'm not trying to go into all those details, but like I know that other people, I think inside Utah it's such a different ball game than outside Utah, right? And even like outside of Salt Lake proper, it's a totally different story, right? And I think about a lot of times like my friends I grew up in, because I grew up in a little town in Missouri, you know, and I think about growing up there and then also returning back to a scenario like that outside of the state, and I think it's so hard, and I feel like I think almost in some ways it's harder, you know, because there's just not very many people to date, and on both men and women both feel this, right? And so and it's really hard once you get over 30. It's fantastically harder, you know, and it is better when you take your focus off of dating. But I've also seen some of my friends that have taken the focus so far off of dating that they are not really actively pursuing commitment and relationships, you know. And as much as I do think it's important to serve others, you know, but what is the greatest commandment, right? Love the Lord thy God, and when the second is like unto it, love thy neighbor as thyself, right? So like, I think it's so important that we think about, you know, how we can kind of help ourselves even when we live in situations where there's not many people to date, you know? And, you know, I just think, when I think about that, I think about the one girl, and this is what I think, because there's somebody listening, I'm sure, out there that lives in that circumstance, you know? And when I started working with my friends to build a singles program in Birmingham, me and my friend DJ Bernie and Jerry and so many others that helped out. I mean, it was just like I could never have done that on my own without all of their amazing support, you know, and and all the people who came. But when I started going to family meetings, starting having family meetings, I was just a ward rep, and I just made the decision I was going to show up even if nobody came at all, you know. And it was amazing. Like, just by showing up, lots of other people started coming, and then we grew the program and stuff like that, and we had baptisms and people got married, and this was in a very small group, you know. But one of the things I would see is that there would be these people that almost were like, you know, this program isn't good enough for me. And what would happen is, and I just wanted to kind of bring this up, is like sometimes what happens is people get going in a singles program like this, and they're there for like 3-4 months, and they're like, man, there's nobody here I would date. And they disappear, and about 2 months afterwards, the kind of person they probably would have wanted to date drifts in, right? And then they completely miss each other. Why? Because both of them gave up too soon, right? And
Right.
they were so focused on what they could have gotten out of it that they missed that person that they probably would have liked to have dated, you know? And it's definitely not easy out in, you know, the places where there aren't many people to date, but I think people
I'm
can.
sure you show in your documentary, and what made you decide to film your experience?
It was the Lord, you know. I didn't know anything about film, and I started it with a $100 camera and dumpy little car and little just lights, and you know, I just felt really compelled. That's why.
All right. So tell us how someone could see this film, or I think when we talked, you're looking for funding to finish it, right? To do
I'm gonna be
work on it.
right. I'm gonna be doing a Kickstarter. So the production company is LDS Sword. That stands for something that my friend Cherry Smith came up with, called LDS Single, Widowed, or Divorced. That's the production company, but the film is called 30 Seconds to 30. And you can look at, we're uploading the trailer right now, but had some technical issues, but it'll be at 30secondsto30.com. And we will have a link by tomorrow there for the Kickstarter. And because I need funding to get it, my computer's so outdated, I had to borrow a computer to get this to happen.
Well,
So
we'll
I
put
need
a link for the Kickstarter on our Facebook page as well, so that if anyone wants to contribute, so we can get this done and we can all see it, you know, people can do so.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. Well, that, yeah, definitely, like Caroline said, we'll put a link up to that. Obviously, you know, I think this is something that we could all watch and learn from, and things like that. I think you're right in, you know, that experience you shared. You know, when we do these things, like, especially in places outside of Utah or outside of the kind of the main hubs, essentially you have, you know, Utah, Arizona, northern Southern California. Outside of there, you find all these little kind of smaller singles areas, and you know, you just got to keep at it, and I mean the people are coming. You just got to keep coming, because you never know when someone else is going to come along that'll, you know, maybe be someone you could date or something like that. You know, it's just like everything we learn in the church is endure to the end, and I don't think that this is any different. I think we got to keep at it, because if we really want to find someone to date who's in the same place as us, and that's kind of the only way to do it. So, any final thoughts before we wrap up?
I just think everybody should just be a light. You know, honestly, like, be a light. Don't be passive. If you think that there's something not right about your situation or where you're at, do something about it. That's what I think.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it. And for those listening or viewing, we are going to have a part B where we're going to talk a little bit more in depth on these issues. And so we hope that you go over to Patreon and watch it. And thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Okay, bye.